I suppose maybe in my father and mother, like I says my mother should have been an actress and my father was just really gifted kind of academic, but maybe unknowingly I picked up on the fact that maybe they weren't doing what they wanted to do. You know, that there was a sense of obligation. My father was so responsible to us and that my mother was so responsible to us that maybe I'm not saying this is the case, but maybe I imagined that they hadn't really done what they wanted with their lives. Yes. And I think I decided I am going to do what I want.
Yes, but I always start at the beginning. That's a good place to start. About your early life and how you found yourself in this dance world. And it wasn't really at the beginning, but it was you were born up in Dublin in 1969,
correct,
northern Dublin, and I guess that was quite a different place to how it is now, Dublin.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, in some ways, and some ways I guess not. The people who live in the houses now that I grew up in are extremely wealthy, but when I was there, it was really a kind of a working person's estate. There were these new estates, but now they're worth millions.
Yeah.
So I suppose the affluence of the area I grew up in now has greatly increased since I was there, running around with a stick.
And you went to school. What was your schooling there?
I went to an all-boys school called Belgrove Boys School, and then I went to a school called St. Paul's in Raheny.
Catholic school?
Oh yeah, but there was no options. Like it was, I mean, yeah, I know it was, 800 Catholic boys in a school, yeah.
And your parents? What was their profession?
My dad worked in the civil service. He kind of rose to the position of assistant secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Okay.
That was his kind of his highest position.
Yeah.
He was an incredibly smart man, really highly educated, kind of an academic sensibility. Went back to Trinity College Dublin when he retired to study pure Latin and Greek.
Okay.
He was one of those.
Right.
And my mum.
That's what I'm thinking of doing.
I'm definitely not thinking of doing that. My mum was should have been an actress really, but her father advised her against that,
right?
Because of the poverty associated with being an actor or an actress, and still. But yeah, you know what I mean.
Did your father advise you not to go into what you?
He did, yeah, he did. Yeah. He very kindly did. He thought it was a really bad idea.
Yes.
But he was. I mean, it was. Now that I'm a father, I suppose I understand better. At the time, it felt like he was stopping me doing what I wanted to do, but I think he was really trying to help me. I was the youngest of 6, you see, and the eldest was a doctor, and the next was an architect, and then it was an architect and a lawyer and an engineer, and then me.
Yes.
And I was going to be a barrister. That was the plan, because I was actually quite good at talking, believe it or not, which is odd for a choreographer, no? So I got into Trinity College Dublin to study law, but I didn't go. I went to the Central School of Ballet.
Yes,
down the road.
But tell me, why did that happen? What was urging you to do that?
God, I don't know. Well, I do know now, but at the time I didn't really know. It was just something I wanted to do. I suppose maybe in my father and mother, like I says my mother should have been an actress, and my father was just really gifted kind of academic, but maybe unknowingly I picked up on the fact that maybe they weren't doing what they wanted to do. You know, that there was a sense of obligation. My father was so responsible to us, and that my mother was so responsible to us that maybe I'm not saying this is the case, but maybe I imagined that they hadn't really done what they wanted with their lives.
Yes.
And I think I decided I am going to do what I want.
Yes, but why was it? Why was it that? So because the Irish don't have a dance tradition, of course.
Yes.
But it's more of a theatrical. You know, why not become an actor? What was it about the dance?
Well, I actually went. We were studying the Scottish play for our leaving cert, which is like the A levels And I went on a one-day theatre course where, you know, to learn a bit about the actual play as opposed to a manuscript, you know. And someone at that weekend away, someone noticed that I was kind of theatrical, and they offered me a place in the National Youth Theatre. And I took the place, and I was with all these actors. But I remember not liking it. I remember, and God forgive me, but I remember thinking that actors just sat around all day talking about themselves.
God forbid.
God forbid. I was a young man, forgive me. I was only 17. And I always was interested in dancing, really from the age of 14. And my mother had this kind of secret love of dancing. I used to find programs from the Monte Carlo Ballet when they toured to Dublin, you know, under the bed and stuff. And my father even had a great interest in theatre. He took me to the Gate Theatre to see Charlie Chaplin's daughter in a show, and to see Jacques Brel's songs. And so, But
did you see any dance in that time? What was your experience?
It's a really good question. The first dancing I saw was all on the telly. Gene Kelly, Fred Astaire, Donald O'Connor. My mum used to loved all those films. Yeah. But I remember once walking into the room where the telly was. We called it the television room. Yeah. And there was there was some American contemporary dance choreographer had made this piece that was on the telly, and they were, it was all like. Yes. You know, like, and I remember having this moment going like, what is this? Yeah. I still don't know who the choreographer was, maybe Trisha Brown. Yeah. And I remember, I thought, God, I could maybe do that, you know?
Yeah. Interesting. So you ended up in Central School of Ballet.
I did.
Here, down the road.
Yeah, with Christopher Gable.
Yes.
You see, because my father liked the classics, I thought the way, again, unconsciously, I'm not thinking too much now, just following an urge. But I suppose I was trying to validate my chosen career path by getting that classical bit going on, you know, classical ballet somehow. Oh, you know, as opposed to I'm learning how to dance. So I went to this classical ballet school for 3 years. I did a year before in a foundation course, and it was I was like a square peg in a round hole. You know, it was quite a job to stay there. You know.
But you stuck it out.
Totally, I'd be very stubborn. Yeah, they threw me out a few times. Yeah. Not for the reasons you might think, not because I was so bad, but I have quite a rebellious nature, and some of the rules and some of the, some of the stuff around it I used to push against.
Yeah, I could see why that is. Yeah, no, really. So then what happened? Well, you graduated.
I was lucky. At Central School of Ballet, I did have Christopher Gable for a few years, but then he took over Northern Ballet and then he was gone. Yeah. But he was really kind of a Renaissance man. Like, he had worked with Ken Russell, and he'd worked. You know, he danced in The Boyfriend and the West End, the musical, Twiggy, and he was so kind of cool and interesting. And he didn't mind that I was crap. You know, he was kind of he used to talk to me about stuff like Benjamin Britten and you know. So I was very, very grateful for that experience. So I graduated and set up a dance company when I was 21. Called Cartoon Dance Theatre, and we did one show at the place, a full evening of choreography, and I did do that, and I raised the money and I found costumes. But then what happened? I auditioned for a musical that Sir Kenneth Macmillan was choreographing at the Royal National Theatre. It was Carousel, directed by Nick Heitner when I was 22, and because I could sing, not because I trained, but just because I could sing, I got in. I got a job.
In Carousel?
In Carousel at the Royal National Theatre with Sir Kenneth Macmillan. And then what happened was Sir Kenneth died during the rehearsal process. He had a heart attack at the Royal Opera House during a performance of The Meyerling. Yes. And I got a phone call from Nick Heitner saying, I hear you can choreograph, because I used to choreograph at ballet school. Yeah. And Kenneth knew I could choreograph because Robert Cohen, this is getting very convoluted.
It is, but and also you're name dropping like
no, I'm name dropping like mad, you know. But there used to be this great choreographers course, composers and choreographers course.
Yes.
That Gail
Gulbenkian.
The Gulbenkian choreographer up in Leeds, up in Bretton Hall.
That's right. Yeah.
And I got a place on that, and Robert Cohen was the mentor, and Robert Cohen was a friend of Sir Kenneth Macmillan, and he told Kenneth Macmillan about me. Okay. And then I ended up choreographing the last unchoreographed part of Carousel in 1992.
You took over.
I took over with Simon Rice, who had been an ex-first soloist of the Royal Ballet, but Simon was more experienced, so he kind of probably was more responsible for the end product.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, it was kind of a sign
Yes,
from the universe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you set up Fabulous Beasts.
I did in 1997 in Cork. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did.
So you went back to Ireland.
I was still living in England then. I went back to Ireland later. I went back to Ireland in 2003,
Okay.
just after I made Giselle. I moved back, and I bought a mobile home, and I bought a field, and I lived in a mobile home and a field.
Great. So I'm going to stop the kind of chronology because we could keep doing that. And I want to sort of think about some of the works in sections really. So, I mean, so the first one, for example, Giselle, and then The Bull and Rite of Spring, Swan Lake, they all have in common this, well, fascination or the urge to talk about Irish mythology, you know, how things are in Ireland, you know, the myths and legends, and they all have those themes in them. You know, and the context is different, but they really all are theatrical, and they all tell that story. What was it what drives you to always be telling that story of mythology and Irishness? Because obviously you went back to Ireland,
I did.
Right? And it feels like you really wanted to mine that in your work.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember wanting to, if you know what I mean. Like it just would kind of happen, for better or for worse. And I noticed, I guess, you know, this thing of procrastinating and trying to avoid doing something. Like, I would be trying not to do what you're describing. I would be actively trying not to do it. And it just would be like you were being almost hunted. It sounds very dramatic. But you know, this kind of relentless kind of, you have to do this now. You like, oh God, do I really? Yeah, you're gonna, you know, that's this conversation that goes on. So honestly, it wasn't like I went, oh, I'm going to mine that tremendous vein of Irish mythology and make millions from it. It was, it's like possession. It's kind of like, and you never really know why you're doing it when you're doing it. And then a few years later, you read a few of the reviews, and the reviews are very good because they explain why you're doing it.
Back to you.
So sometimes it helps, you know, and you go, okay, now I understand.
Yeah. But do you think it was a tale, I mean, you're saying you're not conscious of this, but do you think it was a tale that needed telling? Because I mean, you know, people have an idea of Ireland, and lots of you know the wrong idea about it.
Oh yeah.
But you weren't actually portraying all the nice things either. Some of the work's quite brutal and
I've got less violent and dark as I've got older.
I know, but they were, weren't they?
They were.
I mean, they really they portrayed the kind of cruelest, sometimes the cruelest, and the you know uncomfortable parts of Irish society.
Yeah. I have a cousin who's a very esteemed professor of English called Declan Kybert. Like he's really smart. And I remember being in a taxi with him coming from the Abbey after a performance, and I said to Declan, I said, this is like in 2006 or 7, I said, Declan, what do you think of my work? And he said, you need to review your opinion of the Irish peasantry. And he got out of the car and he said, see you later. And I remember with The Bull, like I was trying to build a house in the field with the mobile home, and it was during the boom, and you could get no one. It was impossible. Like everything was so expensive. No one would turn up for work. Everyone was just partying. You know, so much money around the place, and it was so. For me, it was kind of heartbreaking because I'd moved back to Ireland to kind of find myself, and like all I found were like unreliable plumbers who were millionaires. You know, driving around SUVs, and it was kind of heartbreaking. So I made The Bull in kind of in a response to that kind of heartbreak. Like, is this really who we are? Is this really who I am? And I remember there was loads of bad language in The Bull. Like there was loads of swearing. But I didn't really understand, like swearing. I grew up where swearing was poetry. You know, it wasn't like a dark or cruel or sinister thing. It was like, how, you know, how the fuck are you? I'm fucking great. How are you? Like it was loving almost. Yeah. And you know, and so I'm raising that because after one of the performances of The Bull, I got accosted by a group of American theatre aficionados who had flown to the Dublin Theatre Festival to experience Irish theatre, and they came to see the Bull, and they were appalled by the Bull, like they were so shocked, and they were shouting at me, like, you know, at a talk like this. They're like, you know, Irish people don't talk like that. Irish people don't act like that. I mean, they don't do that. And literally a few hours earlier, I'd been up on a roof in Westmeath trying to put me slates on, and a builder said to me, he says, Michael, he said, will you pass me that old of a hammer? And like, you know, that word, you cannot say that word.
No.
I mean,
you just said it.
No, I know, but I just said it. But what I mean is that he didn't attach any negative to any kind of. It was just loving and playful.
Yes.
And so then I realized this in real time. That's what's great about the theatre, is you learn all this stuff in real time. I remember sitting in your theatre many times going, like at that night at the Rite of Spring in Picturesque where it all went wrong, but you're learning all the stuff, but it's all in real time and it's all in front of 1,500 people. It can be a very, very cruel place to learn, but my God, when you learn. And you get wise then. But sorry, to answer your original question, yes, there was a gap between how maybe English people perceived Irish people and how American people perceived Irish people. And I was maybe enthusiastic about reducing the gap.
Because you must have seen this sort of thing around you. You must have seen, you must have heard some of the stories that, you know, the darker side in society, or not?
I guess the thing about the darker side is it's usually the things that no one is talking about.
Yeah.
It's the thing that they're not talking about.
Yes. Yeah.
And that becomes problematic. And I think maybe that's the connection to dancing and making dances and making theatre that's visual or non-verbal. Because it's in the non-verbal space where those things that are unspoken become really pregnant.
Yeah.
And someone said to me, and I think they were right, was, you can't tell much about me when I sit still, but not a whole lot. You can tell, well, whatever, it's superficial stuff. But as soon as I move, you can tell a whole lot more about me. But imagine if I start to dance, you're going to start learning a lot more about me. So I think whatever way I was formed, I grew up in a family where there's a lot of talking, a lot of shouting, a lot of arguing. That maybe by sitting and observing, you start to get this capacity to perceive what's going on when in those unspoken, unseen places, and then you get feel this responsibility to get it out,
Sure.
you know, to make it manifest.
Yes.
With good intentions. Like sometimes you're the best intentions in the world, and then you wish, God, I wish I never made that piece. It's just caused so much trouble for me. But you know.
They are very dark. I mean, I look back at some of the clips from that period, and it did get lighter. You'll see.
I got happier. Yeah,
yes, exactly. Yeah. But also, you did sort of you were making work during a period of recent Irish history where there was that boom, but then it went off a cliff, of course, and that's also in your work, particularly in Swan Lake. Yeah, it did. Because it's the other end of the boom, where people really that's also a story, isn't it?
Yeah. I think that there were hard times. But I think in hard times there's huge potential for good times, that you really learn to appreciate what you've got. And I also heard someone say that, like, people dance, really poor people with nothing dance, like, and they don't. It's not like they do because they have to, because they want to, and it's important, and there's a connection there maybe in that. Like, some of the finest people I've ever met have been the poorest people, like, and they have the best stories and the most shiny eyes. Yeah. And I love dancers as well. Like, dancers very often have very little. Like, I mean, most people don't know, but a lot of dancers have so little. Yeah. And they're doing it. It's like this deep love affair with this art form. Yeah. That's so sometimes unforgiving,
And there was a moment where you threw everything away.
Yeah, I did. I had a big fire.
You threw away Fabulous Beasts.
I did. I had a fire. I had a huge fire in my field in Longford. I had the model boxes from the shows, all the programs, the T-shirts, and I built it all up. And I got a can of petrol, and I was with my son. He thought it was great crack. And I lit it up.
Dare I ask what was behind that?
Someone really wise said to me I needed to walk away from the shit, which I thought was a very wise thing. It's that I felt like I got caught. I wasn't making good work or something. I got caught up in something, maybe in career a bit, and it was never my intention. And I also got tired of the name. It's a bit of a responsibility. Fabulous Beast, like, you know, to be carrying that around with you, the Fabulous Beast. Yeah, and I needed to do a David Bowie on it. Yeah. And just clear the decks, and I'm really glad I did, because the work I made after that, the piece with NYDC, Swan Lake, Mom, and How Do We Answer, I think they're really good. Like, I mean, I know it doesn't matter what I think, but I think they're pretty good.
So you needed to just make a break. You also changed the name into an Irish name.
Yeah, I did.
Daṁsa, yeah. Which is House of Dance. Or,
yeah, Teac means house, Daṁsa means dance. There's another word in Irish for dance, rinka, and another word for house, tig. So it could have been tig rinka. Or Teac Daṁsa.
Yeah, I think you chose the right one.
Yeah, thanks.
And then you also moved, didn't you?
I moved to West Kerry, to the Gaeltacht, yeah.
Yes.
I moved from the Midlands. So the Giselle, the Bull and Swan Lake are all set in the Midlands. Yeah. And St. James, Son of James, and the Rite of Spring. They're all set in kind of the plains of the Midlands, from all my ancestors were from.
Yes.
But I needed to get away from my ancestors as well. I needed to go to another space where
other ancestors.
No, I know no one in Kerry. Like,
yes, yeah, sure.
I said to someone once, I've no bones in the ground in Kerry. There's none of my people are buried there. And I didn't know that, but Aboriginal people in Australia say that if your people are buried on a land, you can claim to be from that land. But until you have people buried on that land, you're not from that land, which I think is quite a nice metric. So I've no one in Kerry, so I'm kind of free of them.
Yes.
A little bit freer of them.
But you seem to be going further into Irishness. Can I say Irishness?
yeah, of course you can.
So you're going further.
You're being an Irishman.
I know, I've got an Irish passport, yes. Well, not really, but anyway. But you're going further and further into this, it seems.
Yeah.
And speaking more Gaelic, may I say.
Yeah.
And also wanting your children to learn Gaelic as well as English,
Yeah, and French.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's a really rich, like, it's not out of the, it's not for, you know, it's not entirely selfless. It's such a rich place, like, culturally. Like, where I live, there's castles and tombs and cairns and churches that are, hundreds of years old. Yeah. The language is thousands of years old. The music is extraordinary. The people, the conversations, like, it's they're poets. Yeah. Everyone's a poet in that part of Ireland. It's overwhelming, actually. I wish I was 20 or 30 years younger. I'll have to come back another time to really get there. You know, the language itself is a complex language. It's huge vocabulary.
Were you brought up with Gaelic?
No, no. My mother and father could speak it fluently, but they chose not to. My father chose to speak French. You know, he used to have the French radio turned on. Yeah. And you see, it's problematic, especially if you live in Dublin, especially in the 1970s and 80s. Irish language, you know, was associated with some darker, problematic things, and then it was associated with the church a bit. But it's above all of that. It's a beautiful, poetic, ancient language. You know, that's so inspiring to speak.
Yeah, good. So, the other kind of pieces which are of a different belt are the Arian. And this actually, Mom, in a way, in that they're and correct me if I'm saying something wrong, but they're sort of led by a relationship with a musician.
Yes.
Both of them. Rian with
Liam and Mom with Cormac.
With Cormac, yeah. So that's a different way of thinking. So you're not really thinking about telling a story. No. You're thinking about starting with a musical. A musician, actually. A relationship,
more with a relationship. So both those individuals are from an Irish-speaking lineage, so they're both fluent Irish speakers. Yeah. They're both fantastic musicians. They're both really, the way they think about things is extraordinary. So, like, being in their presence and hanging out with them, as you do when you're making a piece of work, just triggers all this, kind of fires off all this stuff for me. And then I can kind of, and the dancers, none of whom are Irish actually in Mom, nor in Rian. So they're coming at it to it completely with the kind of an openness of a child, and that creates another potentiality that I think is beautiful, you know.
Yeah. So tell us about the relationship with Cormac, for example. What does that bring to the
fiery, complicated relationship.
Well, he's a concertina. He's a
concertina player.
Concertina player.
But he's also got a PhD in psychology. He also just bought a B&B. He's running a B&B.
Is he?
Yeah, in West Kerry. Like he's one in a million. That fella, like.
Yeah.
He's
looking after the B&B while he's on tour.
He'll have some fella down there doing it for him, I'd say, while he's here. But Cormac, yeah, he's just so smart, and so he plays that music. He plays that instrument like no one else living. I don't think anyone plays the way he plays it.
Yes, yeah. But what does he bring other than that? I mean, because
that's a lot.
Yeah.
You know, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot.
That is a lot, but there's more, isn't
That's
there?
like having, in football imagery, that's like having Messi on your team.
Yeah, it's true.
You know,
it's true.
You know,
it's true. But he's from a lineage too, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Yeah.
His father plays the buskakiol, the accordion.
Yeah.
His sister plays the violin. His grandfather played. His uncle, who was a very, very highly esteemed musician called Seamus Begley. What else does he bring?
Well, he brings in the film I saw. He talks about the. His own family history, and how that way back into
the Battle of Kinsale.
Yeah, exactly.
It was 1603. So his ancestors came to fight in the Battle of Kinsale. They were Scottish gallowglasses, mercenaries, and the Irish lost that battle against the English.
Yeah.
His people ended up on the Dingle Peninsula, which is a very, very kind of remote place, and stayed there until now.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's kind of amazing.
It is amazing.
Yeah, to be around.
That's what I mean. It's not
it's amazing.
It's more than the.
But it's all in the music, Alistair. Like,
yeah.
But for me, obviously everyone hears things depending on their formation, but I hear it in the way he plays. All those stories are kind of like literally kind of come into the room when he plays.
Yeah.
The way I perceive music and the way when people dance, the room gets full. It gets really full for me, and that's when you know, okay, now I'm in a place where I can make some interesting decisions.
Yeah.
So the reason why I work the way I work is to create that kind of tone in a room.
Yeah.
You know, it's like at 4 o'clock in the morning in a small pub in West Kerry. You know, and where it starts to get kind of juicy.
Yes.
But you don't know what's going to happen.
Yes. Sounds like the Shakespeare's head.
Exactly, just like the Shakespeare's head.
Yes. Yeah. So yes, I want to talk about your process, right? Because it's quite unique. Because everyone moves down there basically to where you live, and you stay. Everyone stays.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And it's a very intense period. I mean, I know this now because I saw this film, The Dance, just on Monday, and I saw it before as well. And it talks about the process. They go through the whole process with you, and you see how it all works. But that's very unusual, isn't it? To bring, including the musicians, so everyone comes and stays, and then you spend time together, and there is this. Talk about the process of, particularly with Mom, for example, the process of improvisation and not starting to create any structures or any kind of like meaning until much later, or as late as possible.
Well, I suppose I feel like the meaning comes by the process. That you read about that in textbooks, product and process and that relationship. But like the process is the product, and the product is like that's simply the way it is for me, the way I see it. So the meanings become apparent over time. If you start creating, you're not dealing with paint or granite. Like you're working with people, and I think if I don't mean to say this, but like if you turn people into objects, they become objects. Like if you start telling them what to do, I hate being told what to do. I hate it. I really can't stand it. I feel like So I think never tell anyone what to do. Rule number one. I mean, I say turn up at 8 o'clock in the morning, and the bus will pick you up at 6. That's kind of it. And then we'll feed you, and we'll feed you really good food. And if there's a problem, we'll change the food. Food is very important, as you know.
Yes.
And then if you pick like very good people, like very good artists who are really good kind of interesting people, like Connor Scott we were talking about before, or James O'Hara, or Rochelle Poirier, or you put them in a room with Cormac and then these other musicians from Stargaze like Roman Bly, or like, it's just endless what can happen. And the challenge then is not to create anything or it's just to put a bit of order around a sequence of decisions you make.
Yes,
but,
yes.
But you know, I do, the other thing is though, it all sounds very kind of, you know, a big love in, but it's not like that at all, because discipline actually is comforting. You know, knowing you can complain about the choreographer because he's an authoritarian is comforting, because now you can just turn up and do what you're told. But in the way we work, you have to turn up and be responsible and participate. And the outcomes are a consequence of the level of your participation. Like the show is theirs, you know, as much as mine or as anyone's. So it's fascinating. But as I've got older, it's gotten less intense. It's getting more and more relaxed. The only pressure is that I have a contract with Sadler's Wells or with the Dublin Theatre Festival, who have to have a show because you've sold tickets. So we know there's, you know, but I mean, it's
there's a moment where you have to have a show.
We have to have a show.
That's right.
And that moment is like it's looming and looming, and the clock is ticking. And
I know, but so just to go back to the film, it's really interesting how you are holding back, holding back. Everyone's holding back. To before you start that actual process of making
because I used to that transition from the freedom into the structure. I used to make a mess of that transition because on Friday I'm like, how's it going, Alistair? Yeah, just show me a few moves, and then on Monday I'm like, do it again. no, not that, do that one. And like everyone goes into kind of shock, you know, what's happening? But now I've learned that it has to be a much more gentle transition, and you learn to trust. You just get better at what you're doing, and you know that it's going to come together.
It's true to say you would never, you don't see that in the work. Like you're saying, you think, oh, it's improvisation. You think, oh, but actually you don't recognise that.
Good.
What you get is in integrity, and people are actually, the movement belongs to them. That's what comes through, I think. Yeah,
I think that's really important to see that, because it's
one thing though.
No,
so
here's the note.
Because
it's always the same.
No, because in the end, I think they move like you.
In the very end, or in the end?
Not the end of the show, but generally, I can see when you're moving, I can see the quality of your movement still comes through somehow. How you are as a. Do you see what I mean? It's still.
I'd love to agree with you. That sounds amazing. And maybe you're right. I suppose I do participate. Like I'm not a choreographer who would sit in a chair now. I'd be up dancing around a lot. I remember when Connor came to do an audition or a workshop for Mom. He said he was all very free, and he was like, God, I was dancing, and he went, I wonder where Michael is. I better just check is he looking at me? And he said, look, couldn't find me in the room. And he said I was in the corner with my eyes closed doing that. And so and that was the moment that was
the
it.
Movement exactly, I'm talking about, Michael. Yeah, just remember that.
But that's really interesting. So what was interesting about that was I closed my eyes, and I think what's curious about what I do is that I never work with mirrors. I was trained in front of a mirror, but I never ever work with mirrors. So I don't pay too much attention to how things will look ever, actually. I was going to say even till the end, which is challenging in big theatres where form becomes more important with distance, because so you use light and you're communicating through form, because the poor fella in the back of the upper circle can't see you. But I generally don't think about shape too much. I think more about feeling, and then I'm entirely confident now that direct connection with feeling creates shape. So if I'm happy or relaxed, I make a shape. If I'm feeling a bit intense, I make a shape. If I'm feeling sad, I make a shape, and so forth. It sounds really simple, but it can be a very complicated science and an art to do with the feeling and shape and how you transit from one to the other. So there's a lot of eyes closing in my world, and as soon as I close my eyes, everyone's gone. Like no one's here. When I've developed it now, I'm now entirely on my own, and I'm gone. No, and it's great, because when you're choreographing, you're always in public. You never, you're always having to make up material or answer questions or solve problems with everyone looking at you, and that can be hard, especially if you're shy. So it's great when you have a device where you can be entirely alone and make the decision that you need to make
Yeah.
You know, because there's a lot, you know, there's a lot of posturing required because there's a lot of power dynamics. So you have to appear to be important and be cool, but that's not great for making good dances. You know, you need to.
Sure.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. But you're still, in the end, you're in charge. In the end, aren't you? Still. I
don't like that language. In the end, I take more responsibility.
Okay.
In the end, I'm the one that'll be called an idiot in the Telegraph, which I have been called. I wear it with honour.
and other papers.
And other papers.
We're coming to the end, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about what's next. And I know you've already made it, but you have this fantastic show, which is more or less our conversation now, but in a dance piece. Tell us about it.
Well, it's called How to Be a Dancer in 72,000 Easy Lessons. And it was kind of inspired by what happened here. Did I tell you this story? So on the night of the Rite of Spring Petrushka, you very kindly invited me to make a work here on the 100th anniversary of the original Rite of Spring. And I'm a huge follower. I'm a devotee to Igor Stravinsky, to the point like when we were in Venice, I'd got in the boat and sat in his grave and like I was like chatting with Igor. Like Igor Stravinsky, Vlastislav Nijinsky, that time was kind of the time that I'm very interested in.
Yeah.
We're doing the show here, it goes wrong, and before I know it, I'm on the stage in front of 1,500 people, asking them not to leave, because we're trying to fix the problem, and it was all very intense and interesting. And I went to the bar afterwards and I felt 100.
What did you do?
I started speaking in a French accent for some reason. Going, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I started doing breathing exercises.
Yeah, but you did something else.
I sang a song. They were really taking a long time to fix the problem. So I was like, does anyone want a song? And someone at the back went, yeah. And I went, okay. I sang a song. But, so afterwards I came up here to see you, and it was quite humiliating actually. I felt so old. And Claire Verlet was there, and she was like, God, that was amazing. She said, you should do a show. And that was like in 2013. So then when COVID happened, I was at home a lot, and I was like, started writing, I was like, I wrote this show. So it's me and Rochelle Poirier, my partner, and I talk, and Rochelle dances, because Rochelle is really a dancer.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun.
It is also your autobiography, isn't it?
It is. I changed one detail in every story so no one could kind of, I could just go, none of it's true, to create a bit of protection around my own personal space if necessary.
Yeah. Good. Well, that's next for us after Vermont. So that will be in the next show here.
Yeah, I hope so. I'd love to do it.
We're looking forward to it. Cool. It's great.
Thank you.
So thanks so much. That's
thanks,
really
Alistair.
great. Great to talk to you, and we'll continue. Thank you. Cut. You want us to do it again?
Without the swearing.
Without the swearing.
I had to say that story.